many people on YouTube talking about, and that is a technique that I like to do where I add a new element every 4 or 8 bars just to kind of keep a production feeling light and fresh and having some dynamics. I feel like a lot of people hear this tip and they think that it has to be really big stuff, like you have to add a new synth part, or you have to add a new guitar lick, or you have to like completely rearrange the drums. But what we want to do is we want to make these small little additions that are almost imperceptible to the listener. They just kind of make the song feel a little bit more new as it progresses. So we're going to take a look at a track that I've produced. I'm going to show you some of the different changes that I have every 4 and every 8 bars, kind of show you what it sounds like with and without it, explain why I do those, and then by the end of the video you should have a pretty good idea of things that you can add to your track as you're building. Hear this tip and they think that it has to be really big stuff, like you have to add a new synth part, or you have to add a new guitar lick, or you have to like completely rearrange the drums. But little additions that are almost imperceptible to the listener, they just kind of make the song feel a little bit more new as it progresses. So we're going to take a look at a track that I've produced. I'm going to show you some of the different changes that I have every 4 and every 8 bars, kind of show you what it sounds like with and without it, explain why I do those, and then by the end of the video you should have a pretty good idea of things that you can add to your track as you're building. Hear this tip and they think that it has to be really big stuff, like you have to add a new synth part, or you have to add a new guitar lick, or you have to like completely rearrange the drums. But little additions that are almost imperceptible to the listener, they just kind of make the song feel a little bit more new as it progresses. So we're going to take a look at a track that I've produced. I'm going to show you some of the different changes that I have every 4 and every 8 bars, kind of show you what it sounds like with and without it, explain why I do those, and then by the end of the video you should have a pretty good idea of things that you can add to your track as you're building. Hear this tip and they think that it has to be really big stuff, like you have to add a new synth part, or you have to add a new guitar lick, or you have to like completely rearrange the drums. But little additions that are almost imperceptible to the listener, they just kind of make the song feel a little bit more new as it progresses. So we're going to take a look at a track that I've produced. I'm going to show you some of the different changes that I have every 4 and every 8 bars, kind of show you what it sounds like with and without it, explain why I do those, and then by the end of the video you should have a pretty good idea of things that you can add to your track as you're building.
I'm going to get started. So, first off, why is this on the screen? I have some cool news. This is the new...
Hear this tip and they think that it has to be really big stuff, like you have to add a new synth part, or you have to add a new guitar lick, or you have to like completely rearrange the drums. But
huge fan.
Little additions that are almost imperceptible to the listener, they just kind of make the song feel a little bit more new as it progresses. So we're going to take a look at a track that I've produced. I'm going to show you some of the different changes that I have every 4 and every 8 bars, kind of show you what it sounds like with and without it, explain why I do those, and then by the end of the video you should have a pretty good idea of things that you can add to your track as you're building.
I'm going to get started. So, first off, why is this on the screen?
Thrilled to be a part of this team.
I have some cool news. This is the new...
Hear this tip and they think that it has to be really big stuff, like you have to add a new synth part, or you have to add a new guitar lick, or you have to like completely rearrange the drums. But
huge fan.
Little additions that are almost imperceptible to the listener, they just kind of make the song feel a little bit more new as it progresses. So we're going to take a look at a track that I've produced. I'm going to show you some of the different changes that I have every 4 and every 8 bars, kind of show you what it sounds like with and without it, explain why I do those, and then by the end of the video you should have...
What about if I do that? There's something else playing. No. I get it. Okay. Yeah, I guess it was pretty dumb of me to think I could monitor the chat and then have the video go. Okay, well, now I know. Okay, thanks, guys. Okay, here's what I was saying while that was happening. All right. Okay, so here's what I was saying while that was happening. This is my new podcast I am producing for Rolling Stone magazine. It is a podcast about the discussion of the internet. It's hosted by two incredibly funny people. But we talk about the conversation of the internet. We talk about what people are saying, usually correct a lot of false things. And I am super, super, super psyched to be part of producing this. It really was a podcast I was really big fan of beforehand. So I hope you all will check this out. But let's get into the good stuff. So first off, the big news this week, I'm up as loud as I go now. So hopefully that's good enough. So the big news of the week is, of course, that Spotify and YouTube have started to do tipping for musicians. I think that this is super, super interesting. My voice isn't audible, huh? Okay, let me try this. Okay, let's try that to see if that works. Okay. Okay. So, thanks, Derek. I appreciate it. So YouTube has launched this super thanks thing. In the super thanks thing, as you can see now, you can tip us YouTubers $2, $5, $10, $50. But if you are monetized on YouTube, this is the thing you can do to generate more from your fans, especially, you know, if you're doing vlogs, some things like that. Yes, your Mr. Tuber 909 is 100% right that this is inspired by Twitch. This is everybody catching up to Twitch and 10-cent music. Truly, this is like one of those things that YouTube and Spotify should have been doing forever. Why they haven't, well, there's a variety of reasons, but this stuff gets complicated when people are stealing content and things like this. It makes it even harder to account for. But I think they figured out how to put this on their revenue sheet and then pay out. And really what we have to remember is now that there's competition with Twitch and YouTube, Spotify's not feeling too much competition, but boy, are they getting scared about audience. I'm going to talk about that in a future episode. They're starting to see that they gotta work hard for keeping musicians happier. But yeah, so if you're making videos on YouTube and you're monetized, you can be adding this to your profile. You just have to go into your preferences and do it. And then of course, a little known thing is that Spotify has tipping too, which you can do. I mean, I was talking about, I think while it was feeding back this week, but like my favorite video, or my favorite artist in recent times, is this one, Delete Zeke. He made this record called Frailty that is just like the most unbelievable record I've ever seen. But so sure enough, you know, I was on his Spotify profile and I saw he had an artist fundraiser up, and you know, somebody had tipped me $100, and I won't say I don't need money, but I don't think I need money the way a young musician who's barely making a living needs it. So I passed that $100 on to him because that's what you should do. But that's also what this enables, is like at the height of when I was most passionate about his record, and I'm just losing my mind at how talented and amazing and how emotional this record is, I feel the need to give. And I think that that's always what's going to be great about tipping, is that you can catch people when they're most enthused to your music and be able to, one, profit off that, and then two, us as music listeners, we're going to be able to give back a little bit more in an easy way. So, I mean, all this is to say is that, yes, Twitch, Bands in Town, Bandzoogle, and more have all always had buttons like this available. And truly, if you are on these things like Bands in Town, you should make sure that if you use that a lot, you should be signed up to get that, since people are able to, when they see your come into their town, they're going to miss you and they want to support you, well, they can give you a tip that way. So that's always been super helpful. Bandzoogle is, of course, a direct-to-fan website building software marketing thing. They've had a tip jar forever. I mean, longer than Twitch. So, okay, let's move on from there. So, this one's pretty interesting. This is from today. Spotify is finally pre-testing pre-saves with Florence the Machine. So Spotify is testing a pre-save. So obviously, there's this certain YouTuber, looks a lot like me, who talked a lot of smack about pre-saves for a while. I changed my mind as Spotify started to do playlists a little bit different, and we're going to get into that. Oh, there's some amazing playlist news coming in a few minutes. But so here's the thing. They're starting to do Spotify pre-saves kind of like the way Apple does, where there's a countdown, you're able to save it a little bit more, but you're even able to do these clips. I talked about this in a YouTube short and TikTok I made on Charlie XCX when she put up her new record, that a bunch of the different songs had clips to them that were kind of like stories where she just tell a story about the song, and, you know, you could watch it if you wanted to go deeper with her as an artist. So these clips will play. You'll be able to pre-save. There's a countdown. And, you know, I'm sure also they'll be collecting data about how many people are doing this and then figuring out how to do features with artists for their tracks. So I'm kind of stoked on that. Okay, next. Here's the real fun stuff. Spotify playlist study finds major labels have most influence. The details. Now, I know you guys, y'all get very, very upset very, very fast about some things. Truly, what I want to say right off the bat is this is one of those headlines. I mean, listen, Ashley King is a phenomenal writer, and I feel like probably one of the people I source this stuff from the most. But, you know, I work in media. Like I said, day job, I do a lot of work for Rolling Stone and the Daily Beast and a couple other media outlets. You know, we got to get you all to read. YouTube, same thing. We got to get y'all to click. Hence why my video today is called How Musicians Get Signed in 2022, but I'm talking about plenty of other things than that. Okay, but so let's break this down. A consulting firm called Music Tomorrow published a study where major labels accounted for nearly 70% of the music featured in the New Music Friday playlist on Spotify. So New Music Friday is probably one of the most broad and let's call it solicited. Now, what I mean by solicited is I've explained this in the past, but major labels and the big distributors find the people who make the choice of who these songs are on, and they push them to give them placements. Because basically if you're on New Music Friday, it means one, any money you're paying for that salary is coming right back into you with royalties. And then two, it really, has an effect on breaking artists. And that's, you know, what their job is to do. So it makes a lot of sense for them to do it. So it makes sense that, you know, you're going to see a playlist like that have a lot of that. I thought this was pretty interesting. Of that number, 30% was Universal Music Group, while 19% for Warner and 19% for Sony. Universal has been pretty much killing it in the major label sphere, so that's not that shock. But some people would think is like, wow, it's that much more than the other labels. But truly, I actually think that it's shocking that they're not a little bit more ahead than them. But yet again, this kind of goes back to the thing of the soliciting. So when you're trying to keep three relationships happy, well, you're giving each of them kind of probably an outdue share than as opposed to their market share of what is actually on the charts. So anyway, here's the next thing I think is interesting here. The major labels' share of new music on Spotify playlists like Rap Caviar and Get Turnt were even higher in the same period. 86% of new music added to those playlists are from artists represented by major labels. Today's top hits and pop rising playlists saw 80% of their content come from major labels. Okay, so these are the biggest playlists on this platform, no doubt about it. So part of why this I don't think is shocking is these playlists really are not where you're going to see an artist who's not established already get added. Like, this is the place for somebody who's really, really, like, I wouldn't say like a household name yet, but they're getting pretty solidified in the genre. It's not going to be your first song that's going to get added here right away. You're going to get added to some of the smaller playlists. And so, you know, in a recent video, the one I did on Chartmetric, I showed how Chartmetric have these amazing playlist journeys. In fact, here, I can show it right now, I believe. So the playlist journeys, of course, and if you didn't watch my video on Chartmetric, well, shame on you. You're able to see that some playlists people get on first and then they end up on it. Whereas you could also see, if you look ahead, where after they're on a playlist, where they end up. So it's an interesting thing that, like, yes, Rap Caviar, you got to be on a ton of other playlists. And then by the time you get there, if you're a new artist, you probably need to have had, that song's going to probably be too old to get on there. So it's going to be your next single, if that's hot, gets on there. So that's why. And so then, of course, if you have hot singles, you're probably getting pursued by A&R, especially if it's that big in that genre. They're signing people really, really fast. So that'll all make sense. So, but the one thing I want to say that I think is like a little inaccurate about the headline is, like, yes, that's true in those big playlists, but like a lot of the other playlists that Spotify does, that still is not the case. Like, they have so many of these playlists that are all about showcasing unknown artists. So here's a good example. This is the playlist I listen to the most on Spotify. It's called Hyperpop. And as you can see, Warner Music has 6% of it. Sony has 1.82%, which is 2 whole tracks of the playlist, and the same thing with UMG. And then all of this is mostly DIY artists using their own labels. A couple of them, like PCA Music and Dog Show, you know, have a few different artists. But truly, you know, some of these genres, here's the Pop Punk's Not Dead. So when you look, Pure Noise, which is probably one of the bigger indies of the genre, has just about as much as Hopeless Records, which is under control of Warner, or at least under distribution of Warner. But like, truly, I mean, actually it says, yeah, the 12% total versus 11.25% total. So like, it's pretty negligible, and then it's a lot of DIY stuff. So I think it's pretty interesting that, like, you know, there still is huge genre playlists that this is not the case, that it's all major labels. It's more that just this is always an amorphous thing, and that every genre changes over depending on what really it is. That is the dynamic of the genre, because at the end of the day, these playlists, they have to keep people listening. And, you know, if the major labels aren't serving them the fresh stuff, like in hyperpop, you know, it's just not a genre where major labels are signing up artists like crazy. So that's why you see, I mean, it's funny because like really Big Beat and Atlantic do a lot of the signing in that genre. So you see so little representation there, because that's just not where the labels are at yet. And so this playlist is actually probably one of the least solicitous playlists you'll see. But yeah, I think that was pretty interesting. Let me go back here. There's one more detail I wanted to get into. Okay, so here's the most interesting part of this article that kind of contradicts the headline. As of 2022, Spotify curates about 5,000 frontline official playlists, which were assessed in the study. Music Tomorrow notes that the winds of fortune may be changing for indie artists. Currently, April 2022 is an outlier in their data, with New Music Friday featuring 63% tracks from non-major labels. That's a shift from previous months where releases from indie artists barely broke through 30% of the content featured on New Music Friday playlists. So if you're not following that thread, they're actually saying that Spotify's changing its ways a little bit and starting to put a little bit more of fresh finds, let's call them. I think it's actually interesting that like they're trying to go a little bit more DIY indie. And this is another thing too. So like I have like a team, and like one of the girls who does some work for me, we noticed a thing, and this is why we took back our anti-pre-save stance, that we started to see a lot more artists get added at the 2 to 3 week mark. Now, you can actually see this. We studied this in Chartmetric. So here's an interesting thing. Like track age before the playlist in the Hyperpop one, 0 to 1 week, and then there's some here, but there's almost nothing added in the 1 to 6 months range or the 6 months range. Whereas on this playlist, track age before playlist, like a lot of this is like, it's a slow moving playlist. Like it waits for like artists to get hype around their music. It's all these playlists are a little bit different here in that respect of like how fast they add tracks. But a lot of this, if you want to get added to them, it's like, it's about building up those streams and your consistent sustained promotion. So you got, yet again, this is another reason why this is in that $10 a month Chartmetric plan. And you can see all this data. And if you're targeting certain playlists, you can adjust your strategy accordingly, since it's so much different from genre to genre. All right. So the next thing I want to discuss this is an article on Billboard Pro, so it's behind the paywall, by Lindsay Havens, How to Manage a Music Star, Advice from 33 Masters. So there's a funny thing. I used to do a lot of these articles, and, you know, like the worst thing about doing these articles is you're basically asking everybody the same question, which one would think is cool. But the problem is these people are so busy that a lot of the time they just kind of half-ass their advice. And they also really say a lot of cliche things. These people are not trying to give you some brand new advice because it's not in their best interest to teach you anything. But with that said, there's some really good stuff, but it is laughable how much I have this term I like to use called thinking for people who don't think. And it's like basically like things that people are like, oh, wow, that's crazy. But it's like, this is the most basic information. Like if you've studied this at all, and if you're a fan of this channel, like most of this article will be boring to you. But I did want to pluck out a few choice bits. Funny enough, though, this writer really knew what was good, because you have some of the biggest names at the bottom and yet some of the most boring advice. And so most of this stuff is at the top. So David Ali of the company Above Ground, who represents Kalani, Rico Nasty, and others, he says, young managers should study and know about every aspect of the business. From touring, record deals, merch, digital music strategies, distribution, publishing, day-to-day, and every single thing that makes their artist business tick. The more you know, the more you understand, the less room there is for the things to go left or confused about. Now, this is, if you all are aspiring music managers or musicians, this is really the truth, is that like, I've come aboard, I think I talked about this in the last stream, is that one of the things I've done over the years is I come in when an artist is no longer active, and I set up their estate to run well and make sure it's collecting all the money. And the amount of times that I have come into a artist and seen that they never been collecting a certain type of royalty, people didn't know about things. This is kind of why I wrote my book. Yes, big plug, get more fans. But yeah, there's like a ton to know, and it really is the truth that like one of the ways, you know, I always tell this story. My neighbor used to be in a band that was big enough that they'd played Radio City Music Hall for 4 nights. So, you know, 20,000 people in there in New York. And when I'd show them the band I managed that played 350 seat places in New York City, how much merch we sold, he wouldn't even believe me that it was true. But the thing is when you don't invest in learning the game and a part of the game. That's part of why musicians aren't funded. Now, I don't want to say Spotify pays musicians fairly, but a lot of the complaints musicians often have, they're complaining while they're like not registered for Sound Exchange and getting free money that takes them 20 minutes to sign up for and get a check for the rest of their life. So that is the part of it that I'm like sometimes like, whatever. Like you got to study the game and understand it. So that, that right there, so some of the first just advice that somebody really should always take. Okay, so Virginia Bonetta from G Major Management. What was the smartest decision you made as a manager that helped one of your artists level up? I was once told by a legendary manager to not sign a bunch of talent, focus on one artist you think you can break. Best advice I ever got. When I signed Thomas Rhett over a year ago, I had a full roster of clients. A year or so into working with the young unknown Thomas Rhett, I adjusted my roster and was able to really focus my time and attention to growing his career from the opening act he was to eventually an arena headliner. A big part of that journey was not signing a lot of talent while we were developing his career. Focus was key. Okay. So the reason I wanted to highlight this one, and now I say that as like, I was just plugging before that I produce about 5 billion podcasts. I do this channel, I do consulting, I do a million things. I've gotten to be able to get away with this in my 25 years. And if I really, really probably did less, I could probably concentrate on growing some things more. But that's not the route I've chosen. But truly what I think this advice that's helpful to you all is that so much of the time when I do consults with you all, the biggest problem you have is that you're stretched too thin and that you need to learn to drop some things or you need to get more efficient with your time. I have a huge staff. I mean, there's like 9 people who do different jobs for me in my life that like help it so I have the time to do things. And like when people see all the things I do, they're like, oh, well, this. Now, you may not have the money for that, but a lot of the time too, it's just getting more effective with time and getting more effective with your focus. Truly, I think some of the time people really don't take inventory of their life enough to go, like half my problems would start to go away if I just focused on this and dropped this thing for a while. What else do we have in here? Okay, this one was really good. So this is from Dre London of London Entertainment, who manages Post Malone. What's the smartest decision you made as a manager that helped one of your artists level up? After Post's Stoney album released in December of 2016, I funded his Congratulations music video out of my own pocket a month later, and it was like gas to the fire. After releasing that video, the song really struck a chord with the audience. It quickly hit the top 10 and was it was played at every graduation, basketball championship, etc. You have to learn to trust your instincts. So what I liked here is this, is so much more, so much of the time people are like, this is my budget. But truly, like, especially like a label will be like, hey, all right, you have $10,000 to record this record, but the person you want to work with is $12,000. Getting in there, doing some crowdfunding, not seeing it, putting investments of yourself. So often, like, I can't tell you how often I'm out with my music business friends, and this story where you funded something yourself, even though the label should have been funding it, you're dropping an extra $2,000 into your album budget because you wanted that mixer really badly and the label didn't have enough money to do it. That was the thing that helped break. And like, I think like one of the things we have to all remember is like, sometimes it really is best, if you believe in something, to really think about what's the effective spend. There's so much of the time that it's like, well, this is all you got. But if you literally just did a little bit more work or saved for one more month, you'd actually be in the effective range of a budget. I talk about this all the time as people ask me, how do I spend $1,000 to promote your music? And I'm like, I gotta be honest with you. There's not really a great way to spend $1,000 except for TikTok influencer marketing in a lot of genres right now. Different story for another video that I've been promising for months, but still working on making that one perfect. Anywho. So the point being, but getting up to $3,000, you could do some really effective things with that. And if that's going to mean that you and, you know, your bandmate save and mow lawns for another month, and then you're able to potentially have your dream life, well, that month was good to wait for, and that time was well spent. Geranium Drive, that's a great question. I'm going to be answering questions in 2 more short articles. Okay, so that was all that was good in this one. So I want to next go to this one, how memes became electronics cultural currency. So, you know, marketing with memes is nothing new, but this article, first off, most music business journalism is literally the lowest pit of hell. It's often bad. It is so underfunded today. This right here is a total exception. This is a phenomenal article. Like, great writing, great storytelling, everything's good. So, but basically we all have known that memes and meme posting is currency on the internet. And really, they talk about how that's become a thing in the underground music world. So I will read in 1 second. Okay. So a lot of this article is about an artist named Void Boy. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to dig into Void Boy tonight. Did not know them before this, but says, when I make music, I'm trying to trigger an extreme emotional response in a dance floor setting. For the record, you should always be, no matter what dance floor or what, trying to trigger an extreme emotional response. Perfectly said there. Which is nothing like the much more intimate communication I'm trying to have with people when I post memes. So I love this because so many artists think that there needs to be a 100% reflection of themselves and what they post online. But it's like, you can totally have 2 different facets. Like, I think of Phoebe Bridgers, who makes the most serious, heartbreaking music, and she just shit posts all day and makes jokes all day on every social media platform, and then occasionally, like yesterday, posts about having an abortion a few months ago. Like, she's able to do it all. It works. A lot of people do it all, and a lot of people express their personality through it. And truly, if you are good with memes, you can really, really do well. So they show some of the memes here, but the next part I wanted to read was London artist Shy One, for example. London artist Shy One, for example, regularly shares her favorite memes across the internet, which helps convey her personality behind her artist persona. Elsewhere, Rico Nasty applies meme formats to real-world situations to highlight the humor in the everyday, while Honduras-born Isabella Love Story's cheeky Instagram posts and eye-watering Twitter exchanges can easily be screenshotted into mimic chunks. In one tweet, the singer shares a throwback of herself holding an abacus next to indie sleaze icon Uffy in 2009. When one commenter asks, "Why are you holding an abacus?" she responds, to measure the BPM, bitch." The memes quickly ensued. So there's a bunch of links in here that you can't see because I used my highlighting software, but truly click through those. If you want to get inspired about how you can be funny, especially if you got a good sense of humor, this article gave me a ton of inspiration. But yeah, it really was great. The other thing I wanted to discuss in here, so many of you, and I made a big argument arguing against this, want to be really, really anonymous. But there's this great quote from Dean Kissick. Dean's like this downtown New York thinker. I feel like he's on a guest on every podcast I listen to. And he says, anonymity is an appropriate response to a time when nobody will shut up about themselves. Shitposting then liberates the artist by rejecting the status quo, with each Pepe or Shrek meme an assertion of individual freedom with online communities, a sort of ego death through posting, if you will. This creates a more authentic line of communication between an artist and their fan base, not dictated by hype, money, or fashion. I don't like anonymity with an artist because it gives you nothing to glom onto, as I've cited a million times in my videos. Fans support the artist they feel closest to, but this right here, you can feel close to an artist through. So I'm kind of into that. The last quote in this article I was going to read from is, I've seen people who've made their name off being a meme bounce back. I've seen people who've made their name off becoming of being a meme become burned out and jaded with the persona they've created for themselves, which is genuinely sad when they've clearly talented at what they do. As a meme takes a greater role in the mainstream, artists must tread carefully if they wish to jump down the rabbit hole, or else they risk becoming the meme themselves. I'm sure we've all seen a million meme accounts get burnt out doing it. It's tough. Like, if you want to grow and you get addicted to that growth, it's tough to keep up with it. It's tough for me to keep up with my YouTube channel. It's tough to keep up with content. It is true, and I think really people have to remember, you can take a breather if you want. You really can. It is not a big deal. So I think that's everything in this article. Well, that's the end of the article, so that's everything. So this is the last thing I wanted to talk about. I found this article pretty interesting. It's by Bobby Owsinski, who's been like literally commenting on the music business longer than I have, which really is something. So the record label's 7-year law may soon come to an end. So this is an interesting thing. I had heard about this many years ago and I forgot it was a thing. If you were ever signed to a deal with a record label based in California and took a good long look at the contract, you were probably surprised to see that if the label so desired, you were stuck with the label for at least 7 years and probably more if the label desired. The labels argued that since there were a lot of upfront development costs in the artist, it took that long to recoup their investment. While that may have been true back in the days when CDs and vinyl ruled, that certainly doesn't apply today, and a new California law takes a different look at the 7-year law to determine if it's reasonable or not. So obviously there's been a lot of discussion that these record contracts are unfair, and the term indentured servitude has been used in some of the legislation around how these laws get reformed. I talked about this in the last live stream, but the great news is the California Fair Act is going to set these artists free. As a result, a coalition of trade groups that includes SAG-AFTRA, a whole bunch of other nerdy things, have helped create legislation. On February 2, it was introduced by California Assembly member Ash Kalera and calls for more reasonable time limits in record company agreements. It gives the talent the ability to terminate a personal services agreement once the time limit has been reached. So, like, what's great about this is we really are probably going to see artists not have super, super rough contracts that last forever. I think this is a great thing. It will also make labels have to value promoting an artist in different ways. I can't even conceive. I only read this yesterday. I've been thinking about how it may shape things if it comes true. But we also have to remember the California legislature is there's a lot of donations from labels, so I'm not counting my chickens before they're hatched. Okay, that is all of the articles I wanted to read from this week. So I want to start answering your questions. So if you have them, please, what do you call it? Drop them into me. So the first question is from Geranium Drive. When is the best time to pitch a new track to your contact list? A month before the release, like Spotify, or after the release when it's getting traction? Okay, so this is a really interesting thing because it really is genre dependent. I talked to so many artists in the consults about this, and like some have way more luck getting people to listen to music that's unreleased, whereas some genres are like, yeah, I only want to see that it's doing well already, and like that it's got some streams, or they don't believe it because here's the problem is everybody lies about the big things to come, as the joke goes, and then there's not big things to come. So a lot of people want to see that you're like actually popping off, and that will get you a better traction. My instinct, if I was to make a rule here, is I would be doing this within the first week the track is out. Okay, what else we got here? Well, first off, thanks everybody for all the nice comments. So K Rich, is posting every other month the most effective? Okay, I just see you retracted that message. I'd be curious for some more details on what you mean there. I see another question. Okay, Duke Stamina. With hyperpop, at least to my knowledge, being more of an emerging genre, do you think that could be a reason that big labels just don't have a lot of influence in them? That's 100% what it is that they haven't glommed on and no one's been a big hit. But boy, I mean, you're starting to see a lot more artists get invested in that genre, particularly by my former employer, Atlantic Records. And even with that example, do you think that more indie-run playlists like that are being promoted as many people as the ones being run by big labels? So there's like an interesting thing that a lot of the playlists run by big labels, and for people who don't get this, the labels all have their own playlists. A lot of those playlists don't get a lot of traction because this is the problem: is they don't have a big enough roster to stack out the specificity that listeners want. Now, there are jogging mixes, and if you're like, let's say Atlantic's Big Beat, you know, you got like 100 songs to choose from just in the last year that are probably going to be a similar BPM for that jog, and that can appeal to people. So, but really, I don't know anybody who worry about the dominance of major label created playlists, because it just, that's the problem is like they don't have a large enough pool to draw from. Zarem, well, okay, no, I'm sorry. I'm missing some. I don't know this Fitnessgram thing, so I'm avoiding that. Is posting a new song every other month the most effective? No, what is most, well, I don't like to say every other month because it's that 6 to 8 weeks is what's most effective. I've come from that for years of watching who really breaks, and that seems to be the right amount of time for people to ingest and take in all that you're making around a song. It seems like that's the right amount of push. Whether one of my first videos, I talked about Billie Eilish and Pale Waves. Then there was Youngblood, and there's been countless other artists who that's been their formula. Okay, so Alex Artificial, what are some tips for connecting personally while still being anonymous where it counts? Example, I don't want my ex-wife knowing where my shows are. Well, that's a tough one. So, like, yeah, I mean, you know, you can get a lot of this done online. You can get a lot of this done in the comments. But yeah, I mean, there are some people who are like, I can't, you know, like I have talked to a lot of people who can't have their jobs know that they do their type of music at night. So that makes total sense. So my thing is then you got to show up online. Like, you know, it's kind of the same thing I said in my video about like, should you move to another city? If you show up online in a big way and you really get in there and do effective work, yeah, it doesn't matter if you do it in person. Lil Witchy, more of a personal opinion, but do you think there's ever a point you should give up? Like, you've been doing this for 5 years and only have 20,000 followers, 500,000 total streams. Should you just quit? I mean, here's the real thing. Whenever anybody quits, you don't know if it's right before you blow up. I can't tell you how many, I mean, the road of successful artists is paved with them kind of having something and then they figure out what's good about them and then all of a sudden it takes off. I mean, most people are not an overnight case. It's them being miserable and wondering why it didn't work. Then the really fun thing is then it works for a while and then it stops working. And then they're miserable for a whole other reason. Isn't music nice? Yeah, I mean, here's my thing. The whole thing I wrote about in processing creativity, and what I believe in every project, is you have to do this for yourself and your own personal enjoyment, and then hope it connects with the world. If I'm being honest, I think I made one of my best videos today. It's doing absolutely terrible. you all should watch it. But like, I can't control what connects with an audience. I can't do it. I have to just make videos that make me happy. Okay. How would you get connected to a manager? Zarem, I got great news for you. That's what I made today's video about. So go watch it. It's right here. Look at that. How musicians get signed in 2022. It's like you teed me up. Okay. Impulse 9, is YouTube going to allow tips thanks for videos that contain copyrighted sounds, such as when Adam Neely does an analysis of an Adele song? No idea there. Planet Jane asks, what's the marketing strategy difference for a solo artist compared to a band? That's not a distinction. It's all about genre. It doesn't really matter there. The Crystal Casino Band says, what revenue sources outside of touring and streaming should artists focus on? I want to be able to do this full time, but the streaming revenue is definitely not enough to cover me and my bandmates. I mean, depending on the genre, that can be merchandise is a huge one. There's so many artists who have figured out how to make merchandise pay them more than streaming. But, you know, a good example is like some of my YouTube colleagues are doing great at that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really know what I would sell. But then you see people in your genre kill it at it. I'd study what other people are doing for that. I mean, a good example, too, is like two of my consulting clients. They're more like metal prog rock based, and like they're literally just doing massacres selling lessons. They sell private Skype lessons, private Zoom lessons, whatever it is, and they really do well. My thing is if you do your community work, you're going to start to see tons of other options and what you should focus on. In fact, like one of the best things you could do while you're doing your community work is like look around through if they have a link tree. When you're following them, see other ways they're making money and then emulate those ways. Xander Miller says, I've developed a heartbreak pop act that is released 6 weeks apart for a year and a half and reached just over 2 million streams across platforms. Thank you so much for your insight. Well, hell yeah, I love to hear that. Sometimes this stream just pulls down way far. Question though, how do you scale beyond this point? It feels like we are plateauing with new release. Okay, so this is the thing, and this is the whole reason on this channel I discuss 10,000 fans compared to the other thing is, this then becomes a lot of time is, one, how do you call the right people attention to? Yet again, that video right there talks a lot about that. If you didn't watch it already, I see only 474 of you have watched it so far. One, trying to get attention in the music business. You're now at a point where you have enough metrics that you should be able to easily get a lot of doors open for you. I mean, in fact, if you have that many streams, you should just bang my line in my email. I might be able to even send you to somebody who's looking that can give some opportunities. But like two, I mean, a lot of this is how you generate more fan excitement. How do you give people the things they want to give? Talk to them on social media. What do they want from you? And start delivering on that. Mr. Tuber 909 says, enjoyed the new video today. Thank you. Thoughts on getting signed by just submitting songs? I know major labels don't do this without a reference and busy indie labels don't accept them, but a handful of them do. I guess I'm wondering if it's possible to get signed without already having promo and traction just on songs if they're undeniably great. The odds of someone listening to your song unsolicited are almost not worth focusing on. It's the exception to the exception to the exception of the rule. You got to go through other means and try to do it. I know a lot of people don't like that, but really it's not the case most of the time. Shayla McDaniel says, I've been doing consistent sustained promoting for 16 months with good results. I'm promoting old songs using CSP starting June accept a new Christmas cover. Do you think this is a good strategy? If that's all you can do, that's a good strategy. Yeah. I mean, sometimes we can't create content. What else do we have? Louis Lazuka says, how do you stay present to the moment instead of chasing the next achievement and be happy? Well, the easy answer to that is a meditation practice probably and a lot of therapy. I don't have a problem. I don't focus on the future very much, and I really don't focus on the past. I pretty much forget everything. But I do that by staying so busy and challenged that all I can ever do is focus on what I like to call like the next lily pad. Like I'm like, okay, where do I jump next? What do I do? Okay, we got to focus on getting off this lily pad and getting onto the next one and getting onto the next one before it sinks. So I'm maybe not the best person to ask them that. Zarem asks, do cover songs end up on the artist you covered release radar? Only if they give you the tag, which they're not going to do because they're not a part of it. You're putting primary artist on there. Now, it's one thing if you do a remix or they commission the cover and it's like on their release, then it can, but no. For the most part, no. Alex Lucas asks, are longer songs less likely to get on Spotify playlists versus songs that clock in under 4 minutes? Should I consider making radio edits for all my Spotify track submissions? Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. There's very few genres that take long songs and find that to be a normal thing. Holyfield asks, what are the must-have social networks today you'd recommend for metal bands? This is a pretty easy one. Twitter is for socializing with people you meet. Instagram, TikTok, absolutely crucial. If it's metal made for older people, you might have to unfortunately focus on Facebook a little bit. Cemetery Chip says, trying to make a post-punk dark wave-ish group break. Any specific genre advice for that? If you have any experience in that genre. Well, I mean, yeah, I have a good amount of experience in that genre. I think that if you watch my cheat codes video, I'd kind of take the indie and the metal ones and kind of mash that up. Louis Lazuka asks, how effective is covering trending songs on TikTok or Shorts Reels? Should I focus on original? I mean, I have not seen, like, YouTube for a while covers were solid gold, but it does not seem like that. TikTok that's not seeming like what that's really is the place that that's happening. All right, how close are we? All right, I have to end about 2 minutes early because I have to go to the bathroom before my next thing, and I'm live on here again at 6 o'clock. But I'm going to answer a few more. Lou, personally starting to push pop punk emo as my main genre in South Korea. There is not pop punk emo going on at the moment, unlike the States. What do you think about doing this genre as a Korean artist? I got to be honest, I don't know anything about Korea aside from I like the food a lot. Brett Neville says, I don't know if you've worked with many electronic music artists. I have. But are there any big difference in marketing them compared to bands? Yeah, watch my video on cheat codes for each genre. I talk about the difference. Oh well says, I keep coming back to your community video. It's so good. Like I said, my most important video. People should go back to it and watch it a lot. Renatunes has a good one. Do you think doing things like Pomplamoose and Scary Pockets cover songs once a week is a good strategy for the beginning of a career? 100%. I mean, honestly, covers for a consistent amount of content can bring a lot of attention to you, find people who like your voice, and truly, really make people who are less susceptible to find you. I'm going to do a video on cover song marketing soon. Okay, K Rich. Do you think popular producer placements is a good strategy to get an artist's name out? That strategy has worked well in getting me connections. I'm wondering your take on it. I'm not following, unfortunately. Sorry. And I don't think we're going to have time for you to clarify. But maybe next week, since we're going to be doing this next week, you could clarify that a little bit more. Yeah, Louis Lazuka. Oh, so covering trending songs would make more sense with duets and stitches to find community. That's correct, actually. All right. I'm at the end of this. Thank you all so much. Let's do this again next week. I'm probably going to do it an hour or two later next week, but I'm also always happy to hear from y'all in the Discord or the Facebook group about if a time would be better. I have to do this around some of my day job things, but yeah, I'm psyched. I really enjoyed this. Hopefully next week, less tech problems. Okay.